Hi guys, and welcome to this Maya videos tutorial. This will be a relatively short one. What we're going to have a look at today is some of the common modeling tools in Maya that you're going to be using all the time. So let's get started. We're just going to drop in a polygon cube and just on our polymodeling shelf, and that should just spawn one in unless you have what's known as interactive creation turned on, which is in here in your create menu. Just it's up to you. You can either have it turned on or you can have it turned off. I generally keep it turned off. But a few things before you actually start modeling. Remember that whenever you spawn something new into the world, you don't necessarily need to just use these polygons, these vertices, these edges that you have here. You can always come in and create some more resolution if you need it. Bear in mind, you do want to keep things fairly low poly whilst you're getting used to it and when you're blocking out the overall shape. The reason for this is that it's far easier to manipulate only, for instance, in this box, only 8 vertices, compared to far more. But if you do need to subdivide something, you can always come in, click on the inputs in your channel box and layer editor, this polycube one. You can see that here we can adjust the height, width and depth, and we can also change the subdivisions. All I'm doing is clicking on the title and then just middle clicking and dragging, and I can increase or decrease the amount of subdivisions that we actually have here. So that's entirely up to you. Now, if I can just show you this, let's just move this off the side. I'm going to turn off snapping. Obviously, like, both of these objects look the same, but manipulating this object into more complex shapes, I have far more control now with this than I would with this, because if I come in and start to change the vertices, if I box select that, just make sure, because when you box select it will generally draw through the object, so I'll have to hold down control and remove those points from selection. Oh, I had some on the bottom. And I could also see there that this move tool has currently been set to the component mode. That's why they moved down this way whilst these ones moved this way. So I'm just going to set that to the world by holding down W, left clicking to get this radio menu and changing that to world pivot point. So, this type of manipulation is stuff that I would only be able to do with this amount of divisions compared to the original here, which can only move these individual vertices. The other thing that you'll want to be aware of is that you can turn on a smoothing operation onto your objects by pressing, it's kind of like a temporary one. If you press number 1 on your keyboard, that will get you back to the raw polygons. 2 on your keyboard will show you a wireframe of the original polygon shape and a preview of the smoothed version of that shape. And if you press number 3, it will just show you the smoothed version. Now, what has actually happened here is that every single vertex has kind of averaged out its position. It hasn't added any more resolution to our shape, which is why if I go into vertex mode, you can actually see that it's still just trying to adjust those 4 polygons. And if we want to get it back to the original, we can kind of just toggle between number 1 and number 3 on your keyboard. But watch what happens when I press 3 on this object. It actually retains its shape far better. And that is because the vertices have, because they're averaging distance between the next vertex it can find, it has far less distance to smooth between. Whereas this one, this vertex, is trying to smooth its average value between this vertex, and this vertex. Whereas this corner, for example, is only going this distance. Yeah? So it's very important to understand how you're actually going to be modeling things, whether you're going to be using raw polygons or whether you're going to be using what's known as subdivisional modeling. Another thing to kind of be aware of, if I just clone this really quick by holding down Shift, is that I don't necessarily need this amount of geometry to get a very similar effect. If I use our first tool today, which is the poly slice tool, which normally just lets you kind of cut into your polygon, but if you hold down Control whilst you have this activated, sorry, let me just cancel that. There we go. So if I have Control held down whilst this is activated, it's actually going to give us a loop slice, and it will try and cut through any four-sided polygon as far as it can go. There are limitations to this, and I'll show you it in a second. But yeah, if we cut very close to this edge and press 3, you'll see what has actually happened. It's retained the shape of that edge very carefully whilst everything else gets smoothed out, and has produced this very unique shape that would actually be fairly difficult to model if we had done it normally. Similarly, if we just cut the bottom, holding down Control, and another holder edge on both of these, we are actually getting something far closer to our box kind of shape. Let's do one more here, and that should be all of it. And if we go to our selection and just kind of go to Object and just click off of it, you can actually see what a difference that kind of makes. So the placement of your edges, if you're going for subdivisional modeling, really matters. Okay. Now, a common thing to be aware of in real life is that nothing has completely sharp edges. They will always be rounded. Even the sharpest knife or sword actually doesn't have anything as sharp as these points that you get in 3D modeling. What you generally get is a rounding of a shape. It might be very small, but that's what's going to happen. So if you have the ability to do so, I would recommend that you smooth out some of these edges. So you can do it through subdivisional modeling, but there's another way in which we can do it, which is the next tool on our list, which is going to be the Bevel tool, which is this one here. Okay, and this has given us a secondary kind of menu here. You've got this fraction, which is the bevel amount, and I'm just going to type in a small number here, like 0.1, and you can see that we get a rounding of our shape. Now this has given us a very harsh rounding because we only have one segment. As soon as we start to up our segments, so like 2 or 3, you can see that we're actually getting more vertices and edges kind of along our side, essentially, and that will kind of round out our overall shape. And especially if you kind of view this from afar, it gives us that kind of nice highlight that we are going to expect from most objects. Just be aware that it is introducing some triangles in here, which most of the time is fine, but a lot of times you want to try and keep things what are known as quads, which are four-sided polygons. The only instance that you don't want to have is what's known as an n-gon, which is anything over 4 sides. So 5 sides up to a million sides. You know, not that you would ever kind of have that, but generally you want to either have triangles or 4-sided shapes. Anyway, so beveling is a really great method of smoothing out these kind of shapes. One thing to note, I guess as well, is that if we are using subdivisional modeling, one thing that you can actually do is actually bake that into the shape, and that comes under the smooth command, which is under edit mesh, or is it under mesh? Yeah, sorry, mesh smooth. And if we use the option box, you can actually decide how many division levels it's going to do this for it as well. So this, if we actually increase it to 2, is the shape of an original box when we then press 3. You can see that it's produced the exact shape, but it has actually confirmed the smoothing value and given us those divisions. So if you do actually want to kind of generate that shape fairly quickly and get some more resolution, you can use smoothing to do so. Anyway. So that'll kind of do it for this one. What we've covered is smoothing, we've covered the loop slice, and we've covered beveling. All 3 of those are really important tools in your modeling toolkit. There are 4 more, and we'll cover them in the next videos.